Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be ranking the 7 face palettes I've tried so far this year. So I have already tried 7 face palettes in 2024. Typically that is my standing at the end of the year, but clearly we're seeing a bit of a trend this year. So I thought I would just do a ranking now that we're at the halfway point of the year and share with you my thoughts on all of these palettes. I do have full dedicated reviews of most of these. So let's just hop right into it. Coming in at number 7, and the one I think is absolutely not worth your cash, is actually from MAC, and this is the Teddy Takeover Eye and Face Palette in Light. So at some point, MAC did release a Teddy Forever collection. This included these face palettes. There's also one in a deeper tone. There is also some lip products. Now, I think these were released in Asia early this year. I found mine in store here in Canada a couple months ago, but I haven't seen it anywhere else. I haven't seen it online in Canada or the US. So I have no idea if this collection is going to be widely available here anytime soon, if at all. I don't even know how the store that I went to had it. So I unfortunately don't have any of those details. But if you find this palette available, I would skip it. So this is, like I said, the lighter of the two palettes. You get 4 eyeshadows on the top, and then if you slide this over, you get a highlighter underneath, which to me seems like an interesting choice. So the eyeshadows are fine. They're good enough quality. The look that I come out with this palette always ends up being a little bit more fall-esque. So for me, this is one that I would probably reach for more in the fall months. I tried this in March and I was very, very much reminded of fall. But overall, the eyeshadows actually are quite pretty. They're high quality. They're definitely great MAC shadows. The highlighter on the bottom is too deep for me, but also I just found it to be an interesting choice. I think this would have been much more valuable if we had a blush there instead of a highlight, because a highlight is something that you really need a lot of different shades to cover so many skin tones, and given that they only came out with 2 of these, that highlighter is really not going to work for everybody, whereas blush stands a better chance at working for different skin tones. So this highlighter ends up being more of either a blush topper or an eyeshadow for me. The quality of both is fine, but I think this was around 70 Canadian dollars, which I find a little offensive in itself. I mean, that is a very high-end price point for such a small little product. And I don't find it to be the most intuitive with 4 eyeshadows and a highlighter. That just really doesn't make the most sense to me. I really don't get this palette. I think it's cute. I think the outer packaging is cute. I love Velvet Teddy. I love the lip products that came out in this collection. Those shades are also very fall. I really don't get this face palette. I really don't. I think it's way too expensive for what it is, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Coming in at number 6 is from Tarte, and this is the Maracuja Juicy Eye and Cheek palette. So with this one, you get 12 eyeshadows and you get 2 cream blushes and a cream bronzer. I was pleasantly surprised by the tones of these. I think they're all very, very pretty, and they do all work for my skin tone. I think this is beautiful. Tarte also did release 2 palettes. We have a light and a deep. I love that we have a really good shield here to protect the creams from these powders. I think they did a good job with that. The powder eyeshadows are not their Amazonian clay formula, which is Tarte's best eyeshadow formula. These eyeshadows are nice, but they're very mid-range to me. They're just not expensive quality eyeshadows, is what I'm trying to say. Like, they are definitely more lightly pigmented, but you can build them up. There's just something about them I don't love. They're not terrible quality, but they're not amazing quality. Their Amazonian clay eyeshadow formula is by far the best. I think they're pretty, and you can definitely get a pretty look. The metallics are definitely very shiny and beautiful and not at all chunky, so I do think that's really nice. These cream shades here are really good as well, and they do wear all day long. I think they're beautiful. But again, this is another one that I think it's expensive for what you get. I think this is also around 70 Canadian dollars. And again, because the eyeshadows are very mid-range, I just really wasn't that impressed. These definitely feel very oil-based. They are very, very slippy, but they do stick around on the cheeks for quite a while. I do think they have a pretty good wear time for being as slippy as they are. I think this is a pretty palette. I just think it's a little too expensive for what it is, to be honest with you. If the eyeshadows were perhaps their Amazonian clay formula, I think it would have made this palette a lot more worth it, in my opinion. Coming at number 5 is the most recent face palette I tried. I think I just posted a review on this one. This is the Nars Laguna Ultimate Face Palette. And this one I said I would not recommend for a few reasons. So this was also in the 70 Canadian dollars range. This has 4 eyeshadows, 2 bronzers, and a highlight. So Nars did do a light to medium and a medium to deep in this summer collection. In my honest opinion, I think they would have had so much more value had they broken it up into a light, medium, and deep, and each palette had a blush, a bronzer, and a highlight. And I think that would have added so much more value. I don't need 2 bronzers in one palette. I just don't. I understand that there's 2 bronzers because it's for light to medium skin, but just do 3 palettes and have a blush in here, and I think it would have added so much more value because you really would have had a full face palette. You would have had blush, bronzer, highlight, 4 eyeshadows, done. I think it would have added so much value to these palettes, especially now that they've reformulated their blush formula, which was already good, but they could have put that in here, and I think it would have drawn more attention to the newly reformulated blushes as well. Just my opinion, just my thoughts. I'm not a marketing expert, but I just think all of those things would have made this so much more successful, and I think it would have added so much value to the palette. I understand creating 3 different palettes, it would have been more expensive, but it would have created so much more value, and I think a lot more people would be excited about this. I liked the eyeshadows. I think they're pretty, but again, the same as everything else they have in their lineup. Whereas if I had a blush in here, I would have been more likely to reach for it because everything is in here. Now I'm more likely to just use one of my palettes and my other products. I like this palette. The quality's good. It's just the value to me really isn't that great, and the eyeshadows are the same thing as what's in most of their other eyeshadow palettes. Coming in at number 4 is from Natasha Denona, and this is the Berry Pop Cheek Trio. So this was her Valentine's Day launch for this year, and I was so pleasantly surprised by this. So in this palette, you get a cream blush, you get a tinted glow cream base, and you get the Dream Glow highlighter. So this highlighter is a powder, but I think this cream here is supposed to go under the highlighter. And this is actually such a beautiful, beautiful palette. The shade is a little bit deep for me. It's definitely a really beautiful berry tone. I can make it work, and I really do like how it looks when I use it. But again, it is one of those more deeper, slightly more intimidating shades on me. So I don't reach for it that often, and that's why I put this one at number 4. Otherwise, I think this is a stunning, stunning palette. I think she did so good with this one. Because I like this one so much, I'm very tempted to pick up the My Dream face palette that she has in the same format. I think this is stunning. I think this is beautiful. She did such a great job with this one. And the only reason it's at number 4 is because I don't always reach for this color the most. Coming in at number 3 is from Makeup Forever, and this is their HD Skin Face Essentials palette. This really is a full face palette. So this one, over here you have shades of foundation, concealer, and then over here you have some blushes and highlights. They also did have, I believe, a light, medium, medium to deep in this particular palette as well. So what I love about this is these shades down here are their foundation shades, but you can use them as bronzer. And then you have these blush and highlights over here. These do also correlate to specific foundation shades in their already existing foundation line, but the way these work together is so beautiful. So you can absolutely do an underpainting technique with this if that's what you're into, and it will work beautifully. That's not personally how I like to do my makeup. So what I tend to do is I'll mix these top 2 for a foundation, and then I'll use this lightest one as a concealer, and then I will use this one as my bronzer. And because it's the exact same formula as the foundation, the bronze looks so natural and it just melts into everything else. It looks so beautiful. These shades over here are a little more emollient, but the blushes are absolutely stunning. The highlighter is more of a natural glow from within type highlight, but you can really get every single thing done in one palette. Because I have very dry skin, I love more cream products in the wintertime. I know people tend to break theirs out in the summer, but I really love cream products in the winter when my skin is at its driest and it is looking for every little bit of moisture it can get. I think this is going to be such a staple. That being said, if you're using this every single day, you're going to go through the foundation pans quite quickly. And I also commented that I think that this would have also had a little bit more value to it if these pans were replaceable. They are not replaceable, but I think that this would have had a lot more value if it was. So just because when you go through that foundation, you could easily just repurchase another one, pop in the replacement, and then just keep loving your palette, because you're probably going to go through your foundation shade really quickly, and then you're just going to have these shades down here that you're not going to use as much, and then your cream blushes. So I think that would have added value, but overall I think this is an excellent face palette. I was very pleasantly surprised. I didn't know what to expect. I never picked up one of these palettes from Makeup Forever before. I think this is the third one they've come out with, and I really didn't know what to expect. I don't always use a ton of creams, but I just don't know what I was expecting, but I was very pleasantly surprised. Coming in at number 2 is from Danessa Myrix, and this is the Groundwork Blooming Romance palette. So I did pick up the Defining Neutrals palette that she released last year, and I loved that one, but this one is leaning into these pink and mauve tones, which I absolutely love. And what's unique about these palettes from Danessa Myrix is, so you get a pan of pomade and a tiny little corresponding powder beside it. I do wish that these were maybe matching in size. I do think it's really hard to get a brush into those powders because they're so tiny, but they are beautiful. So this can be used on the eyes, on the cheeks. It says all over the face. I have used some of these pomades as a lip liner. That works pretty well. I don't necessarily love the pomades on the lips. I just find them a little bit too dry for that purpose. But on the eyes and cheeks, this is stunning. So obviously you got a lot of different blush options. And what I found to be the optimal way to use this palette is to work with the pomades first, create your look, and then sort of set everything with the corresponding powders, and that gives you the maximum color payoff and longevity with these shades. You can just use the powders and that works just fine. You can use the pomades, but you are going to get a little bit more of a sheer wash if you just use the pomades, whereas if you use the pomades, set it with the powder, you're not going to be disappointed. This is fabulous. That was something I had to learn. I didn't really realize the first time when I used the Defining Neutrals palette, and over time getting to know the palette, that is what I came to find. And then when I just used that method with this palette, I was so pleasantly surprised. So I will create my eye look, like I said, with these pomades, set it with the corresponding powders, and I love how it comes out. I do the same thing when I use one as a blush. I'll use the pomade and then the powder, and it's beautiful. And I love how it comes out every time, and everything ends up being very cohesive. I love these Groundwork palettes from Danessa Myrix because they really are such a unique release. And Danessa Myrix is a brand that consistently releases new and exciting products. So I'm really, really loving her brand right now, and I'm very excited to see if she releases more of these Groundwork palettes because these are so good. And coming in at number 1, and my favorite face palette so far this year, is the Natasha Denona Hyper Natural Face Palette. So this one is interesting. I do kind of wish with this one she would have released, you know, maybe a light and a deep, but she did only come out with the one palette. So you get 5 eyeshadows and you get your bronzers and your blushes. I personally love this palette. So these eyeshadows are a brand new eyeshadow formula from Natasha. These are designed to be applied to the lids with your fingers and then just maybe blend around the edges, and they're supposed to be one and done shades. However, the shade Dreamy is actually one of her sparkling wet effect shades, so this actually acts as a beautiful topper for the other 4. It's beautiful. It makes your eye look so quick and fast and easy and just perfect. It looks like you put in so much effort when you probably didn't. I love to use this lightest bronzer shade as a contour and a mix of the two for a bronze, and I find that just looks really easy and perfect. When it comes to these blushes, I find this one here is a little bit too pastel. Mix them together and it is a perfect rosy blush. So this is supposed to be like a no makeup, natural makeup type palette. You know, I don't really see the whole no makeup thing, but I do see quick and easy makeup. which is clearly on trend based on all of these face palettes that I've been talking about today. So I love that. I love how easy this is to work with, and this is one that I get excited to work with. You know, I love Natasha Denona's eyeshadow formula. I've said it so many times. This is my favorite eyeshadow formula. I love that we have some powder products in here. Often enough when she releases these face and eye palettes, she'll throw in a cream blush, which I don't like because her cream blushes in these palettes tend to dry out awfully quick for some reason. But the rest of this is just so good, so quick, so easy. I do love this palette. I think she did an incredible job with this one. But that is it. Those are the 7 face palettes I've tried so far this year. I really love a good face palette. I am such a sucker. But let me know down below if you tried any of these. Are you curious about any of them? What is your favorite face palette? What is your favorite go-to face palette to get everything done super quick? Let me know. I love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!